guys? Welcome to the WeddingPros podcast. Today we have Bobby Burns from Redmond Digital Media as well as Wedding Film School on the podcast. He's a friend of ours, but he's also a really, really great creative and super in shape, muscly kind of guy who can do all kinds of amazing feats as a ninja warrior. So if you're into that stuff, stay tuned. If you are a type of person that's just here just so you can hear me publicizing or subscribing, then do that now. Subscribe, hit the bell, do all that YouTube stuff. And of course, if you're listening to it on a podcast platform, we really appreciate the reviews and 5 stars and all that stuff. But without further ado, here we got Bobby Burns. How you doing, Bobby?
Doing great.
Cool.
Welcome to WeddingPros, man. I'm surprised it's taken us so long to get you on, man.
I feel like we've talked about it on and off, but schedules are busy, and you know how it goes. So,
hey, this is I guess the year to do it where no one is busy. So
yeah, exactly. This is perfect timing.
Yeah.
I want to say about Bobby. Bobby is one of the people who I decided I liked him before I liked anything he did. And like as a person, like as a guy, I was like, this is a good dude. I appreciate this guy. Liked him on the internet worlds, and then we went to Vision Quest. We hung out a lot, had some really good with you and your wonderful wife, had some lunch. And yeah, like Bobby's a great guy and really cool dude. And so couldn't be happier to have him on today because we get to hang out with him. So Bobby, how long have you been doing wedding films?
Yeah, so this is, I guess I don't know if you count this season. Obviously, it's a different season.
Does anyone count this season?
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm going to count it because it pads my number of years. So this would be, if we're counting it, this would be 14 years that I've been shooting weddings. So yeah.
Yeah. So what are you like? You started shooting weddings when you were 12?
Yeah, I think I was 9 or 10, but no. So yeah, I look very young. But let's see, I started shooting consistently when I was 18. I actually shot my first wedding when I think I was 16, on a whim. I don't really count that one. So 18 is when I started from. I started as an intern with another company, continued to shoot for them for a little while and started booking my own stuff. And so that was 2007 or so, something like that.
That's great. So you guys are making really beautiful work, doing a great job.
Thank you.
But in the middle of all this wedding filmmaking, you're also a warrior of sorts.
Of sorts, yes.
More of a ninja style warrior.
Yeah, of the ninja genre.
This is one of the, I know this is it's also one of your passions, and it's something that's actually super cool, and I'm not making fun, but it's also like a peculiarity of Bobby Burns. So if you go check out Bobby, you're going to see these wedding films, and then you're going to see Wedding Film School with this YouTuber side, right, which he was doing even before Wedding Film School. But mostly you're going to see Bobby on Ninja Warrior courses. How did you get into that?
Yeah, no, I love that we're just completely off topic here. Off topic of weddings.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my brother, I have a brother who's about half my age. And when I moved back, we were based in California for a long time. I moved back to Minneapolis, and he was doing it. And he was like very, very good. He placed like 5th overall in the world for his age group. And he invited me. I think I actually went to go see one of his competitions. And I was like I saw it. I've always been athletic. I've always played team sports like my entire life. I've always been pretty good at any athletic endeavor. And I watched him do it, and I was like, that looks tough, but I could do that, you know? At that time, he was like 12 or 13 or something. He's tearing up this course, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm stronger than him, you know? And so then he invited me to like an open gym or whatever just to mess around, and I got destroyed. There's probably, 30, 40 obstacles in there. I could do 2 of them, and even then I couldn't even do them well. I was sore for a week after that. But yeah, I don't know, I was hooked. It was challenging. It was something that we could do together. It's hard to find, especially at that time, when he was so young, it was hard to find active things that we could do together. And something that we could actually be competitive with each other. I still compete against him, in like in world finals and stuff, we compete against each other, and he will beat me very often. And so sibling rivalry, definitely a motivator in that. But it's a great workout. It's a bunch of fun. Like, I've never been into lifting weights or anything like that. That was just like a solo sport. So this kind of like, gets you in shape, but it's a fun way to do it. And you don't need 10 people to, set up a basketball game or something like that. So
I love it, man. You're like the Joe Rogan of like the wedding world. Like many
it's basically the
top
same
tier
thing,
talents. So. Yeah.
Little known fact, I was at one point decent at rock climbing.
Okay, so rock climbing, if you have a background in rock climbing, if you have a background in like gymnastics or randomly pole vaulting, like people who do that excel
like
at Ninja
7 people?
Warrior. Yeah, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's a similar, there's a lot of muscles that you wouldn't use in a lot of other sports or activities, but like rock climbing is a lot of grip strength, fingertip strength, forearm strength, stuff like that. So, you do use a lot of that in Ninja Warrior.
It feels like one of those things that if you're gonna do it, you kind of have to go all in. Mm-hmm. It's not like you can just dip your toe in and be like, oh yeah, you know, I'm gonna hurt for a week and then not do it for a while. It's like
I'm just gonna consistently show up for 1 hour a week and be able to do 10% of the course and then go home.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's just like anything, it's commitment. And the first time you go, especially going as an adult, like, it's just pretty discouraging. Like, in a good way, if that motivates you. Like, you might be there and it might be like an adult class or something, and that's great, and it's usually like an awesome atmosphere. But you might be there and there's like a bunch of 10-year-olds running around, like hitting every obstacle, and you like are just falling on everything. So there's different ways about it. But yeah, I don't know. You should give it a try, man. You never know.
So one of the other things about you, and so excuse me for not talking more about your wedding filmmaking, but you're just a diverse person. You have a lot of just talents, and one of the things that you were doing, and this is one of the ways I knew you before wedding film school, or before even Ninja Warrior, which you're very well known for, is the YouTube stuff, the education stuff. And I remember watching one of your videos, maybe the only video I've ever watched on editing in my life.
Yeah.
And I was awesome. Like, mainly because I was like, screw this crap, I don't need this. And then I was just mainly like, oh, I keep seeing this guy, and I want to see what his content's like. And I was like, oh, this is really solid. This is like, it's really good educational content. And so I know that's something that was important to you. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of your initial journey into deciding to make YouTube content, specifically, I think, more educational style YouTube content?
Yeah, so, this probably started, I want to say 4 years, it might even be 5 years ago, I don't know exactly. And that whole stuff kind of came about actually at a wedding. I was walking back to like the ceremony or something with a guest. He asked me, he was like, oh, you like, I forget exactly what he said, but it's like, oh, do you shoot video or something? And for me, I was like, he thinks I'm the photographer, like, the typical dance you do at a wedding with a guest. And you're like, oh, I'm actually shooting video today and whatever. And he was like, oh, no. Like, I mean, do you shoot like other stuff? Like, do you shoot anything for fun? And my, like I wasn't, thinking through my response, just my gut response was, oh, no, not anymore. And when I said that, I was just like, it just like instantly hit me. I was like, that is incredibly depressing, because I started, I got into filmmaking. I went to school for cinematography and whatever, because that's what I enjoyed. Like, my plan in life was, I'm just going to work whatever job if I can make, some kind of film, whether that's weddings or short films or whatever, just for fun. And so, I kind of like took that to heart and thought about what I wanted to do to basically pick up my camera. That wasn't, like, I was only picking up my camera when I was getting paid. And so that started out as doing like little daily vlogs and stuff like that on YouTube. And then, I've always enjoyed teaching. Like, we've had lots of interns and stuff like that. And I kind of just thought, hey, why don't I start putting out some content? Because I was getting sick of the vlogs and it was just getting like boring and dumb for me. So I found this to be a lot more it's a different topic every time, obviously. So it was a lot more long-term for me. Just started putting out content, grew that channel. Like you mentioned, I've now moved on to Wedding Film School. That was about a month or two ago. So my previous channel is still going. It still has our wedding content on there and some of my educational content, but I grew that to just under 10,000 subscribers. And then more recently, switched over to Wedding Film School.
Why do you think, I think I know the answer, but why do you think the average person, it seems this way, that like most of the content that does well on YouTube is very much like beginner content. Most of it is like entry content for getting into the industry. Why do you think we don't have more content targeted at people who are maybe experienced and been around a long time?
I think there's probably two reasons for that off the top of my head, I would say. The first is that if you are making stuff that is a little more basic, you probably have a broader audience. If you have a broader audience, you can, have your videos seen more or watched more time's worth or whatever. Basically kind of increasing all your YouTube stats and having the video perform better overall, which then kind of, subconsciously tells you, oh, make more content like this. I think the second part of that too, and something that I've been guilty of for sure, and probably most people who are kind of more seasoned, in the wedding industry, is that in a lot of ways, like I try to be very conscious of not being stuck in my ways and being open to learning. Like I think we can all always learn. I mean, like you said, we met for the first time at Vision Quest. Like that was, how many of those people were new? Not a lot. Like that was mostly pretty well seasoned.
I think that was the goal, right?
Learning. Yeah, and that was the goal of that, exactly. But yeah, I think that it's harder to make stuff for people who are running a successful business because they've found, their way of doing things, and not that they think that they know everything or anything like that, but it's just harder to reach those people. Those people also probably have more work, which means less time maybe to be watching tutorials and stuff like that. So I think there's other reasons too, I'm sure, but those are two that pop into my head, probably up there. So
yeah, I feel like it's one of the things when we started doing WeddingPros that we were like, we want to make that content. And it's really hard because like the content, even if you do really good content, and I think we're trying to figure out, like I don't know if you saw, we had Mike Michalowicz from Profit First on last week. And I'm like, I feel like moving in that direction of giving people access to people that are even above. I think like the natural tendency is no one will listen to someone who they don't think is better than them.
Yeah, I think that ties in pretty much
like,
with my second point. Yeah.
Like if I go and watch your tutorial and I'm going to go watch your wedding film, and if I think I could edit better, I won't listen.
Mm-hmm. And it's so subjective too.
It is subjective.
Like everyone who thinks they're a better editor, the other person would look at it and be like, Yeah. I think you're moving into a realm of like personal taste, and that's one of the break barriers. And then I think arrogance is a barrier. And I think the only way you can continue to grow is what you said, which is humility, really, is like having the humility to think I need to grow. And I think the second one is community. Establishing community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is a need, and it is the top level of our industry is actually very important because it establishes the pricing for everyone. Yeah. And establishes professional standards for everyone. But that's the hardest group of people to get plugged in and connected.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think also like I would say this for most creative industries, like creative industries where you're self-employed or the majority of people are self-employed, like it can be very, like there can be great community pockets in that, but as an overall, like it can be pretty cutthroat. And so I think it's especially hard to be humble and say like, oh yeah, I could learn something from you, because in a way that's like, it can be perceived as a sign of weakness, and then like, what are you, lesser than them, or you're worse at this, or, like there's a lot of ego and stuff like that. And I think that stuff is dumb, but like I understand why it happens. And that's the same, that's not just filmmakers, that's photographers, that's, artists in general. So
I'm pretty excited and thinking about our industry, because I do think there's another level I feel like that's emerging in our industry with wedding film and wedding video in general, where maybe, because it is kind of a newer thing, doing DSLR and doing this kind of editing, like you've been in this long enough to see it go from like, DV tape and, just, hey, that's what I'm delivering is just I'm walking around and shooting people at the reception saying, congratulations and a bunch of
got a message for the bride.
To what it is now, it's a lot different. And so our industry is, I think, pretty young still. And so I think we're at a stage right now where we're almost realizing like there's another level to this. It's not just, okay, I've been doing this for 3 years. I know how to put a lavalier on it and get pretty consistent audio, and my edits are pretty queued up. It's like there are levels to this game. I feel like there's another kind of level emerging right now.
I can never pronounce his name, but the guy from Super Weddings, a film he did the other day where he composed all the music, and I was like, whoa, that's what I want to do. And it's like, I think like but I think more than any of the next level stuff, I think the floor is being raised into what is normative. Right. And so the expectation of quality is much higher than even 4 years ago and I think the other thing that's happening is the influencers at the top of our industry, and I can't say this for sure about like some of our previous leaders, because honestly, Jared and I have been doing weddings for 10 years or whatever, and I never even heard of wedding film school. Because I was running a real wedding business, and I didn't need the content. I didn't need the content because I went to the school already. And so when I came on, I was like, the first thing that struck me, because I literally didn't pay attention to any content related to weddings till 2 years ago. And I remember joining some of these communities and seeing the people who had the most influence and thinking, these people don't love weddings. And that's changing.
Exactly. Like, I think you have a lot more. I would agree with that. Like, even a handful of years ago, and I saw this a little more, like, I think I saw it more happening first in the photographer community, where the people who were kind of put up as like, oh, the best educators in the world, like, they weren't shooting weddings anymore. Like, they were educators only, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you're making a living and you're happy, that's what matters. But like, I don't know. Like, at least for me, like, it's important that I'm still enjoying weddings. Like, that's always been something that, you guys run a different, type of company than what I run. No right or wrong in that. But like, I've very heavily limited how much I've shot for a very long time now, because I know like where my limit is and where I'm just going to not care about a wedding at a certain point. And I feel like that would be the worst thing ever. So,
well, but it's also
for
like
me and for the couple and whatever. So,
you can't be cynical about weddings and be a leader in a community. You can't be like, I can't wait till I'm a full-time travel person. Screw weddings. Like it's a means to an end to another thing they really want to be doing. And I think that that's changing. I think the people at the top, they may be, as you get older, you can't just shoot as many weddings, but you still love weddings. It's a real industry with long-term viability that's being proven that you can do for 20, 30 years. You can have a real career in this. And I think the pathway is much clearer for people.
And the art's also more respected universally, I think, now than ever before, especially when it comes to wedding films. I think it applies for photography, too. You have all these photographers who are doing, like, super high-end fashion almost. Like, we had Joel and Justina on the podcast weeks back, and they're artists. Like, I would say, first and foremost, they're, like, artists. They're, like, before they're even wedding people, but they do weddings. That's the art that they're doing, and there's more people like that take it seriously as like an art form, and outside people, maybe in the fashion world, maybe in like the documentary world,
the lines
whatever.
Are blurred, right?
It's becoming more blurred for sure.
Between editorial work, the same people who shoot, now you can shoot weddings and then get a job shooting for Vogue. And nobody would blink. And I think, so that's a good thing for our industry, and this idea that it's like this less than art form. Is decreasing. And so I think I say all that to say I think this YouTube thing, I think it's going to stick around. I think this YouTube thing.
You got something going on over there.
What is this YouTube? Yeah.
what are the YouTubes?
Yeah.
But I do think, though, like, what would you say to somebody who's like, I want to get into making this type of content? Because a lot of people, I think, aspire to do this. And in my personal opinion, is more people want to do it than people want to watch it. And I think there's limits. So kind of convince someone to do it and maybe not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can convince you either way. I think the biggest thing for me that, like, just right off the bat, I would say is you have to be really, like, you really need to look at why you want to do it. Kind of like you said, like, it is, especially like wedding filmmaking or just kind of video tutorial stuff like that. Like, not that you can't be successful in it, but it is a very saturated market already. There are lots of people who do great work and have a ton of knowledge educating, and there's lots of people who have only been around, for a little while and sharing little tips and tricks and, whatever. So my biggest thing is, like, you have to do it because you enjoy it or because it brings you some form of, joy or positivity or whatever. Like, if you're in it, if you're like, oh, I don't want to shoot weddings anymore, like, this is my way out, I'm going to educate people. Like, if that's your business plan, I mean, not that it can't work, but it's unlikely to work. Like, there's just so much that's kind of out of your control. So I think if you're doing it because you love it, because you want to share, with the community, or even, like, if you want to give back to the community, like, if you were, big on watching Wedding Film School 4 years ago or whatever, and now, like, you've established your business and you've found things that work for you, like, there's nothing wrong with putting that content out there, and you never know, maybe you get a big following and maybe, it works out all great. But, like, if you're going to base your success or your joy in that topic on, how many views did I get or how much money am I making from it, like, it's probably the wrong reasons, I would say.
The thing that I see too is one of the, and I'm not sure I have this talent, by the way. There's a unique talent needed in terms of, who has the talent, the it factor? Matt Johnson, right?
Yep.
His content is good, but his personality is even better.
Yep.
And so, like, you see, like, it's not just a matter of having good content. And that's what people need to realize. Like, it's making it as an influencer, which is really what we're talking about. It's a different social media platform. Like, YouTube is a social media platform.
Absolutely.
Even though it's a content delivery platform, and more so maybe than Instagram it's definitely a social media platform. And it's got its own community, like, all this stuff. And like, you have to have kind of a decision to not just have good ideas, not just to have good content that is, if it was written on a piece of paper, somebody would say, yes, but it's about how it's communicated.
Yeah.
I agree that is the right way to edit. What good information. Like, people are looking for entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, that's what I would say to someone is, like, and, like, we haven't necessarily, I'm not a YouTube guru. We will post a video and we'll get 100 views on it, given it's an hour and 10 minutes long. But, like, we're not doing that to have a ton of clicks and views. We're doing it because we want to. We feel like it, which is a good reason. But second of all, because we want to get plugged in and connected with people in our industry and make it accessible. Who knows? Somebody might listen to it and it might be the exact thing they need to hear for their business.
Yeah.
So we're not necessarily trying to give you tips and tricks, but, like, at the end of the day, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many things that need to go right. Like, you hit on a handful of them, or kind of, boxes that you need to check. And even if you check all those boxes of, like, you have great content, it's timely, it's, like, put together well, you're actually doing good work in the wedding industry, you have a great personality, like, all that stuff and more. If you hit all those boxes, it still guarantees nothing, So, like, like, you guys, like, your reason for doing it has to be a big motivator for it, because, like you said, it is so much work. And, like, having that motivation and still running a business, like, you guys are still running your business, I'm still running my business. Like, we both shoot plenty of weddings, commercial work, whatever, in addition to YouTube stuff. So having that motivation to still be creative, like, for me, YouTube stuff is a creative outlet. And so that works. Like I can go shoot all day for a wedding, but I'm still pumped to go do a tutorial the next day. But if you don't have that, like it's going to be pretty tough.
I've really enjoyed when we go out and we do, because we don't do a lot of it, but the YouTube content, like we might do, like we did a gimbal video. When we did the gimbal video, I just enjoyed shooting something. Like I never get to go out and like do it, right? And like, hey, I got to go out with Caleb and just walk around with a gimbal and try the 3 different types of gimbals that we have out and see which ones I actually like side by side. I would never find an excuse to do that otherwise.
Yeah.
Except just doing it for a YouTube video. Let's see. Let's go check it out. And like testing our gear and just being a little bit creative and have a little bit of fun at the same time. I don't know. I find it hard unless I'm motivated to like create a YouTube video that people will actually watch to just whip out the gimbal and run tests or something like that. So that's been rewarding for me. But I think you're right. You have to find the motivation, and it really probably isn't going to become Insta famous on YouTube.
I think ego is a very bad reason to do anything because everything that requires a starting point usually starts with humility and with like small beginnings and might never turn into anything. And if you define yourself that way, you're going to be pretty depressed. But I think one thing I would say with anything, this is just a business strategy thing, is like give yourself multiple wins.
Yeah.
And they can't always be tied to very overt metrics. They can be tied to personal satisfaction. They can be tied to networking and connections. You know, like Jared and I have done this WeddingPros thing, and nobody would look at us and say, oh, look, we haven't monetized our channel. We haven't got any sponsors, but I know I've made money.
Yeah.
Because I've been very purposeful with my communicate with the people that I've networked with, and we've been establishing relationships that are valuable for us professionally. We've also, and I think more importantly, established community connections that are valuable for us personally, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I've grown as a creative. You know, like putting yourself out there will force you to have to release good work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your stuff is out there.
when you're around a community that does just amazing stuff, I think that's just, and they can be like, well, yeah, that's good, but like you can get better in these areas. I think subjecting yourself to that is always a really good thing. Yeah,
so it's like if you're interested in doing it, I actually would say there's a lot of good reasons to do it, but most of them are not financial.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, it can be. You can get sponsors. You can get gear to test out. You can get stuff like that. You can make actual money in your bank account. Like that can happen.
Sure you can.
But yeah, like you said, like the other reasons have to be kind of the motivator and you know,
I can definitely make a lot more money with wedding films.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. We're like, do I make money from YouTube? Yes, I do. But like, I could make a heck of a lot more in one day, you know, shooting a high-end wedding. So, you know, and that's just the way it is, and that's
Life isn't binary, though.
Yeah.
Life isn't binary. It's not straightforward. Life is everything all the decisions we make is a combination of like financial reward, creative reward, personal reward. And I do think YouTube is an interesting way for us as creatives and a community. And I'm interested in that next evolution in our industry, specifically in wedding films and wedding photography, is expanding the community, because we need a lot more in terms of mobilizing our standards, mobilizing our pricing, things that really will change our quality of life, that are more conversations that need to happen within our community. And I think YouTube is a great way to do it. Facebook is a great way to do it. And so I think the best is yet to come as soon as we can get through 2021.
And I think too, to that point, like I think a lot of the, you know, we kind of talked about like that top tier of educators now and kind of that new wave of educators in the industry, or newer wave or whatever. And, you know, I think a lot of those people, myself included, are people that are open to having those types of conversations, that like really want the best for the industry, not just for themselves, like are very willing. I mean, clearly you see it in YouTube, like you see it in my stuff, you see it in Matt Johnson's stuff, you see it in, you know, anybody who's kind of one of the, you know, bigger educators in the wedding film industry, is like, people are like an open book. Like people really want this industry to be lifted up as a whole, and not like, I'm not just like, oh, love my tutorials. I feel so big and powerful. You know what I mean? Like, I do not care. Like, I literally want, 100 new wedding filmmakers to see this and be like, oh, I could save money here, or I could do this more efficiently, or wow, my prices actually don't really make sense, or whatever. Like, everybody there wants what's best for the industry, and I don't think that was always the case with educators.
So that is a great segue to what one of the things I think is the most interesting that's happening in your life, and I think it's interesting in our industry just in general, and is you took over wedding film school. And I think if you don't know about wedding film school, if you're just listening, which I don't think many, if you're a wedding filmmaker, you probably do. If you're a wedding photographer, maybe you don't. Wedding film school was, I would think, the premier wedding cinematography, like, training, especially with free content.
Yep.
Especially because they delivered a lot of, there was a YouTube channel that delivered a lot of great content, and I think probably the largest single source of educational content on wedding filmmaking in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of people got their start off of this channel. They've had a couple different people, from Scott McKenna, Craig Adams, now Jason and Bobby. And at one point, this channel was this huge, it was basically a YouTube celebrity almost. And then through different reasons, mainly just the people who were previous owners, moved on to other parts of their careers, moved off of weddings and away from wedding film school. The channel kind of fell into disrepair to the point where they were releasing, like, at one point, like 4 videos in 1 year. And to the point where I literally was like, does that still exist at one point? And not with no certain way. I have zero axe to grind one way or the other with wedding film school or any of those. I know some people have some negative feelings about some of the previous regime. I don't have any of those. And so I was ignorant, and it was new to me. I just knew it was a big deal at one point, and then it wasn't. And I was like, man, I hope somebody can resurrect that brand, that property, because it has so much built-in value and pent-up demand. And so recently, Bobby Burns took a portion of it.
Yep.
And he started kind of doing some of his educational content through that brand. And so that's where they are now. Like, it's kind of one of those, I would say, like one of those movies where, like, you hit the heights and then maybe the fighter hits the mat, and then now we're getting up and we're fighting back. And I think there's new life to wedding film school now.
Yeah.
So that being said, like, first of all, what is it like to take over, like, I think a brand that has so much of it's got a good reputation, bad reputation, opportunity, all these things it's not a simple thing. When you say wedding film school, it's complicated for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you're just thrust in the middle of it.
For sure, yeah. I mean, wedding film school, saying that word will mean or kind of bring up different emotions for a variety of different people. I was, a fan of wedding film school. I remember I reached out to, like, Craig, who started it and ran it for a while, like, right when he was starting, because I was in New York, and I was just like, hey, we should meet up or something. And it didn't work out or something like that. I never ended up meeting him. So, but yeah, I mean, it's, basically I was aware of wedding film school. I was already pretty well into my career at that point. But wedding film school was, like you said, I mean, it was like the main source of education for tons of wedding filmmakers that are still going today, and probably plenty who have moved on to other things or other areas of life as well. But yeah, I mean, not taking it over, but joining Jason in kind of running wedding film school has been a whole bunch of things. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on. There's definitely challenges, like you mentioned. Like, it was kind of the top tier, kind of the go-to, I guess, if you will, especially if you were starting out, but plenty of information there for, more seasoned people as well. And then, yeah, I mean, it changed hands a bunch of times. I think it was, just like we talked about with YouTube, the motivation maybe just wasn't there, or the drive to do it, or whatever. And changed hands a couple times, eventually to Jason, and then Jason brought me on. And so, I think we acknowledge, we definitely acknowledge where it was. It was the go-to spot. We definitely acknowledge where it's been, which is it was kind of just left without any content for a couple years. I mean, some small stuff here and there, a couple, announcements of somebody new taking over the channel and whatever. But we're really intent on getting it back on track. I've been porting over a lot of my previous content, like my library, onto there, and then also creating new stuff, continuing to create new stuff, kind of in the same realm of what I was doing already, which is very similar to what Wedding Film School was in a general sense.
Yeah. And it's I'm super psyched to see it, by the way, because I think, as much as things get personal with people.
Yeah.
The brand itself, first of all, it's just got a good name. I wish I had.
We got in early.
The name is so good, and I think it has a level of importance.
Yeah.
To our industry that, it's better that it does well than it doesn't do well, no matter who's running it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ultimately what we want it to be and what it should be is just a great resource, a free resource for people in any stage of their career, mostly geared towards wedding filmmakers, but there's plenty of stuff in there too that's just running a business or a creative business. I mean, plenty of stuff that would apply to photographers, stuff like that as well. So kind of creatives in a general sense, but obviously the focus being wedding filmmaking. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I acknowledge, you say Wedding Film School, you say some of the previous people who hosted it or whatever, that can bring about different emotions for different people. I think my big thing is I think a lot of negativity is probably manifested more in dealing with, a person themselves. So, if there were plenty of people who loved Craig and there were plenty of people who didn't. And anything there is that's between them. That has nothing to do with the brand. It has nothing to do with what myself and Jason are, bringing to the table now, and kind of our, plans for the future of Wedding Film School.
I think the main question people out there probably have for Wedding Film School is that poor guy ever going to get his $250 back from Craig Adams? I think that's the people are demanding.
The burning question.
You guys should do it. You should do a video about it and give him a $250 gift card.
Yeah, I remember seeing that recently. It came up in something. I mean, obviously, I had nothing to do with that. Jason had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. It's still funny, though.
Yeah,
seems to be the running joke. I had no idea, and then it seems to just,
I want to just Venmo the guy $250 someday, just so he'll be quiet about it.
Yeah, I do see. I mean, it's got to be multiple years now at this point, but I do see it pop up every now and then. It's,
with interest, I mean, it's probably up there now.
300.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things where that's a great example of it sucks that any negative connotation kind of connected itself to Wedding Film School when that guy's dispute is with whatever Craig's company was. I don't know.
Exactly.
But
what so with there being a ton of curriculums and full-time filmmaker, things like that kind of came around the same time, that is all kind of paid content. What in general would you say is a big differentiator between something like a Wedding Film School and what you guys plan to do in the future? I know just a ton of people in the industry are offering kind of a paid curriculum nowadays.
Yeah.
What would you say kind of differentiates Wedding Film School from the paid stuff? And
yeah, I mean, obviously the first and foremost is that it's not paid. At least the stuff on YouTube. Who knows in the future if we'll do an online course or something like that. I think one of the main differences is you look at the people, you look at John and Nick with How to Film Weddings. They just put out, I think it's called the Complete Wedding Videography course, and I could be wrong, so I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But it's a very intentional, step-by-step, start at the start, end at the finish, and obviously you can learn more beyond that. You're not you've not downloaded all your knowledge and you're done learning at that point. But it's very a step-by-step linear guide to wedding filmmaking And I think Wedding Film School, like any YouTube channel, is like a little more, if you go back a year, or, let's say a year from now, you go back a year. So you start with when I came onto the channel. It's not like I start with, here's how to set up your LLC, and here's how to get a business license. And then, in a year from now, we're like, here's how to deliver your films. So, there's not that linear aspect to it. Like there are maybe in small portions where, like you mentioned, my editing tutorials, which I do plan to release on Wedding Film School. I'm probably going to tweak some of that, but like that was 8 or 9 videos that did very much start from the beginning of an edit, importing and whatnot, all the way to delivery. So you get kind of
you
little
totally
pockets
should
of
release
that.
That's exactly
that's
what
plan.
that audience needs to see. Like
Yeah.
for me, I was like, meh, because it's like the stuff I do, but
Yeah.
I was watching it more to say, how could I show this to my editor? If I was
Yeah.
bringing on a new young kid, what would I show him?
Exactly.
And I might show him that, and I think like I don't have any disdain for that, and I think there's a lot of that's an important piece of content, and like I forget what it was like to start out. Some of the questions I see people ask on Facebook, I'm like, are you stupid? Like that you don't know this? And I think back and I'm like, you know what? I didn't know that at all at one point, or until I paid a bunch of prices and then I pay for my education. And so I think it's important, if you're experienced, don't be a dirty old man with crusty, angry opinions all the time. Cause
for sure.
Like you're going to, once that person figures out that audio, they're going to wipe the floor with you because they're going to charge half the price you are.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, so I think that's one of the, I think like, ultimately Wedding Film School doesn't compete with Full-Time Filmmaker. It doesn't compete with the Complete Wedding Videography course. Like that's not the intention. Like you can learn from Wedding Film School. You can learn from John and Nick at how to film weddings. You can learn from Matt Johnson. Like everybody kind of in this sphere of education, whether it's paid or not, is there to help you grow as a filmmaker. And there are advantages to paid courses, the linear and very, like exactly what you're getting. Whereas I'm going to release, on Thursday when I release my next video, it's going to be whatever I feel like releasing. There's that aspect of it. And then I think, a paid course, like we kind of talked about, when you make something for newer people, you tend to get more views, you get more engagement, it does better on YouTube, and you're kind of like subconsciously funneled to creating more content like that. And so I think in a paid course, you can more easily target a specific demographic, which could be somebody who's already very well established, and you're going to get maybe a better response than you might get on YouTube in some ways, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think there's a perception that if it costs money, it's for some people, when you start delivering certain content, like that it costs money, therefore it's more quality, which I don't think is true. But I think one other thing about it is, and I hear sometimes people be like, you need to pay for a course to learn. And I'm like, that's not true either. But it's for some people, if your learning style is much more linear, if that's how you like to learn, a paid course may be better. I think if you want to immerse yourself in what it means to really be a professional, I think YouTube might be better because YouTube is going to do like, hey, we're going to interview this guy, and then like you're going to hear how professionals talk, and you're going to get to know people, and then you're also going to say we're going to review this gear, like they're going to switch gears, and it's more like hanging out with other professionals, and there's a huge value on that you don't get on a very linear. Now you turn your camera to this. Now you do this. Now you do this.
I think that a paid course, or a lot of the paid courses, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's very like hand-fed to the viewer of exactly how to go about doing something. And there can be a lot of like theory in that too. It's not just like do this, do this, do this, do this, but it is very much like, yeah, I mean, if you take one person's course, you're going to get one person. Like Matt Johnson runs his company the way he runs his company. I run my company the way I run mine. You guys run yours the way you run yours. So if I put out a course, it's going to be very much how I see and do things, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, especially if you admire that person, their business, their work, etc. But yeah, going to YouTube, obviously, you're going to get way more, and I think you can learn from everything. Like I have 14 years in the industry, could go take John and Nick's course or Full-Time Filmmaker, and I guarantee I would learn something from it, Yes. So
you would probably, though, learn more from hanging out with a bunch of and having conversations with Alex Douglas than you would taking.
Well, I think anybody would learn more from hanging out
with
Alex Douglas.
I actually don't think that's true, though.
Well, I guess a
person starting out, that conversation might be here, and they're not ready for that. They're ready for this. And I think that's what I like about those courses. They let you hand pick content where someone's ready, and it's a great starting point for someone. I'm pro paid courses and I'm pro YouTube, and I think they're supplemental of one another and coalescing and not opposing. And I think a lot of people should do both.
Yeah, they're both necessary, and they both get you to different stages. And I think you're right, actually, now that you said that. Like, especially if you're just if I go to and chat with Alex Douglas, one of my favorite wedding filmmakers, so much of what I'm going to get out of that, I mean, there could be technical things, probably some editing stuff because he's an amazing editor, but a lot of what I'm going to get is inspiration, motivation, more intangible stuff that you can't get out of a paid online course as much, So I mean, it's very different.
It's all about what goes into the thinking.
Yep.
And less about it's all about the why and less about the how. Yeah. And I think YouTube gives you an opportunity to deliver more. We're not by any stretch educators or leaders in our community at all. But I do think if somebody listened to the people we interview and they listened to the way that they think, they would learn something different than if they watched a tutorial.
Yeah.
And it would just be oh, that's how that guy thinks. That's his temperament. That's his, I'm telling you, I know Henry Martin's pretty well.
Yeah.
He's a good editor and he's a very good shooter and all that stuff, but he's got a secret sauce that isn't shooting and editing.
Yeah.
It's just Henry.
Yeah. It's not teachable. And it's...
You have to observe it over time.
Yeah. And a course is going to... Yeah, it's going to give you tips, technical things, etc. Whereas... watching a podcast or whatever, you're going to learn things, you're going to internalize things, and then those things are things that you will kind of shape and mold to fit you, your style, your personality, your brand, your business. Not that those are any less or more important, but a course is going to be a little more straightforward. Not that there isn't a different way to do it, but I don't know. It's not something that you can internalize and kind of shape as much to you, if that makes sense.
I guess what we're saying is give all your money to educators.
Yeah. I mean, just go on YouTube, even though it's free, and I don't know, find the PayPal address.
Demand a Patreon.
There. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, there's room for both. They should both exist. They both have a purpose. And yeah.
Bobby, what are you most excited about with Wedding Film School in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is hopefully just getting it back to where it was. There's still a community there, both on YouTube and on Facebook, and it's a community of people across the board as far as their, skill set and experience level. So, I hope that we can bring consistent work, kind of gain back people's, I don't know that we lost their trust, but when you let a YouTube channel sit for 2 years, essentially, people move on. So, I think we want to show that it can still be kind of a gold standard, top tier educator in the industry, and really just continue to, to show that and live that out. I've been a part of it now for probably not quite 2 months, something like 6 weeks, maybe something like that. And in that time, I've released more videos in 6 weeks than I think Wedding Film School had in 2 or 3 years. So I think we've showed that we're actually committed. Jason and myself are actually, we are putting out content. We're reaching out to brands, and we're doing what we need to be doing, and hopefully we can kind of get it back on track and back to where it was.
Dude, it's been so nice just seeing life to it and seeing people, get excited about you posting videos and just having the education back in, the school. So
yeah,
that's it.
I think you are a excellent educator. So
thank you.
I'm excited.
I would agree.
I'm excited about because like I've actually taught video editing in high schools for 10 years.
Okay. Oh, dang.
So that's like my first ever real job in reality.
Yeah.
I still teach for like one period a week just because I like teaching. I like educating. But I never, ever like the idea of even screen recording my screen is just like, no. And because like I'm going to skip because I was actually Final Cut certified by Apple.
Very cool. Yeah.
And I pretty quickly realized that I don't even want to learn any of the new plugins because it's fast, or any of the new features, any of the new shortcuts, because I could just be way faster doing what I know.
Yeah.
And that's not really good educating when you just skip stuff because you don't need to know it and you just do it the way you want to do it. And so I'm glad to see like someone who's thorough and willing to be patient with people, even just that's really what you're doing. When you walk people through something, really, really good educators are very patient.
Yeah.
And you're delivering a very patient, measured approach that I think is digestible. And if you haven't checked out his content, and especially if you're like, you know what I would say? If you are a person who's like a photographer who wants to try video, Bobby's content is excellent for you. If you are just maybe you're more of a shooter, but you're not a good editor, or you don't know anything about business and you just want somebody to walk you through it in a way that is going to make you feel not stupid.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, no, I really do think like that your attitude towards people comes through, and that's why I think like we want Wedding Film School to succeed, because I want things that are people first to do well. And I think that's your
the
heart
goal.
and that's your goal.
Yeah, for sure.
So, how do people get connected with you?
Yeah, so you can, all the educational content, especially moving forward, over on Wedding Film School on YouTube. So I think you can just go to youtube.com/weddingfilmschool or just search it. You'll find it very easily. It's going to be educational stuff, and you can see our films on my own personal YouTube, which is my company name, Redmond Digital Media, or just on our website, redmonddigitalmedia.com.
That's awesome, man.
That's about everything. You can see my Ninja Warrior stuff on Instagram. So
yeah, definitely check that out. Hey, Bobby, thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's really, really awesome to kind of get behind the scenes a little on the Wedding Film School stuff. And I hope if you're listening to this and you have a cynical attitude about Wedding Film School, you would at least give it a chance.
Yeah.
And if there's one guy who should make you non-cynical, I think it's Bobby Burns.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you guys so much. This was a blast. I mean, always love chatting with you too, and hopefully, anybody watching learned some stuff.
Well, guys, thank you for watching the Wedding Pros podcast this week. Bobby, thank you for being on. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, where we post each and every episode, as well as give us a 5-star review wherever you might listen to podcasts as well. And guys, also, we never say this, share this with your friends. Share it online if you think that somebody could actually benefit from the conversations we have here on Wedding Pros. Definitely share it with them as well. That helps us out a lot. And we will see you on the next episode of Wedding Pros.